Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Delighted to see you all here, and welcome to today's rescheduled Market Watch session. It wouldn't be very practical to do it in the ward that I was in the hospital yesterday, so thank you for rocking up today as an alternative. I am well, thank you. G'day, Ewan. Yes, feeling much better. Takes more than a surgeon's knife to put me off my stride for long. Okay, so let's thanks, Wayne. Yeah, let's get things rocking and rolling and look at what's coming across the news. But before, of course, we've got to put up this important message. This webinar is based on my opinions and independent analysis, not representative of Go Markets, and is for educational purposes only. So please bear that in mind. There's nothing you see or hear that you should act on personally without doing your own due diligence and deciding whether it fits your plan or not. So all that being said, let's rock and roll. Let's have a look at what's coming across the news today. And of course, we did get a mild drop in US equities overnight with the Fed meeting tonight, really playing on investors' minds a little bit. So perhaps a little bit of caution coming out. We're looking for signals that there may be any changes in expected interest rate policy, of course, and their sort of outlook on inflation, etc., going forward. We did have a lower retail sales number, which under normal circumstances would be disappointing, but really it was probably good that it didn't come in too hot. US futures are only trading very mildly positive. They're really bouncing around neutral, and Asian markets are much the same. They look as though they're on pause and waiting for that news later on from the Fed. And likewise with the US dollar index, which is neutral again, trading around resistance, and hence most of the US dollar crosses are in a similar sort of place. Gold has broken support to the upside, oil's popped higher, and we'll have a look at charts of those in a moment. And of course, copper had a bit of a miserable day yesterday on the back of sentiment change in China. China have been upset about how expensive copper is and may start to use stock levels rather than buying more at this stage. That's what created that drop in copper yesterday. But of course, we've got that session tonight, which it'll be great to have you along to if you can make it as part of the inner circle. And it is a big couple of days today. We've got Chinese data out, and including industrial production, retail sales numbers. We've got US housing data later, but of course, as I've already suggested, it's the Fed interest rate policy statement is going to be the major catalyst for any sentiment change that we get, possibly over the rest of the week. So that's where everything's at, and consequently, now having painted our picture. Good morning, Rachel, and g'day, Josh. Thank you. I am on the mend. Let's have a look at some chart. Actually, let's have a look at some stuff first of all. As you can see by the futures contracts, only very, very slightly positive. These, as I said, have traded around neutral really since market open. Slightly positive on the European futures, but you can see the FX markets are very, very flat. There is some buying coming back into commodity-based currencies, and we are seeing gold and silver move pretty downwards over the last couple of days. Got Brent testing 75, as we said, which is pretty significant. On the economic calendar, we can see these retail sales numbers and industrial production numbers due to come out this afternoon, and that could be a market mover, particularly in the commodity-based currencies and, of course, commodities themselves. If we see industrial production rising, that should be bullish for copper, but the expectation is it's actually going to drop off a little bit from what the number last month. We are getting some housing data, as we suggested, out of the US later, but it's that Fed policy monetary statement which comes in at a very late hour or very early hour, depending on which side of the country on, and then Fed Chair Powell does his press conference, which is where the market really starts to move and groove. Generally speaking, of late, over the last couple of months, the Fed has managed to just calm market nerves a little bit, but prior to that, the economic outlook that was given was pretty bleak, and markets didn't respond favorably. So it's a real bit of a mixed bag in terms of what might happen going forward. If we just have a peek at what's coming up, as I said, it's a big couple of days. We've got GDP numbers coming out of New Zealand tomorrow, unemployment numbers coming out of Australia, this side of the planet, and then we've got some inflation data coming out of Europe, which will be key, and then we've also got the US weekly jobs and Philly Fed manufacturing survey, which is quite an important number. So all of those are coming out over the next couple of days. So it could be quite a choppy little ride that we have. Okay, just quickly check in, and you can see that we've got a mixed bag in Asia. We've got the ASX and the Kospi looking strong. The Nikkei is down on the export data that came out earlier, and China is slightly to the downside as well. So pretty neutral going on right now. And let's have a look at some charts. Let's have a look at the US 500 daily. You can see that pretty neutral candle that we have this morning. And really, if we look at the 5-minute chart, you can see it's moved very, very little since Asian Open, really within about 5 points, which is significantly tight, and again, reflective of the information coming up. If we have a look at the US dollar index, you can see how this is traded around that 90.50 level really for the last 3 days, and has continued to do so today. One would expect commodities to be pretty flat, but that's not the case. Obviously, there's Brent pushing higher again. We talked about this before, trading in $5 increments. And although we expected it to challenge 75, we didn't really expect it to challenge it quite this quickly. So energy is not a bad place to be at the moment in terms of stocks, but also the underlying commodities themselves. I'm going to pop up a gold chart to show you really this demise over the last sort of 4 trading sessions, which has taken us through a key level at 1865. Looks as though a challenge of 1800 could be on the cards, and possibly even a test of that 200 MA, which is around that 1800 level. If we look at silver, it doesn't look quite so bearish, as it is still trading within a range between that 28.20 level to the upside and around about 27.40 to the downside. So we're in the middle of the range on silver, so a slight disparity at the moment between where silver and gold are trading, and that is noteworthy. Sorry, I just had a little bit of a microphone issue there for a second. Okay, so let's move on to the currencies. And as we said, the US dollar is pretty neutral. If we look more closely at what's happening, the euro on an hourly, I'll come back to that. The euro on a daily chart really has broken that range to the downside and looks as though it might be coming back up again. But if we look at it on the hourly and see if there's any short opportunities there, you can see we're really struggling to eke anything out of any worth. There's maybe 26 pips to the downside there at 120.93. That, I would say, is the level to get interested. But again, we're only 20 pips down to the next level. So very noisy around this area. And we're going to see this time and time again. One exception to the rule is the US yen. Now, here's a really good example of why we look at daily charts as our primary, even if we intend to trade the shorter term charts. If we looked at this in a 30-minute chart, we might get very excited at this 110.16 level and say, well, look, if it breaks that, we're game on. But why is that red line sitting there? Well, that red line is sitting there because that was the high we hit at the end of May. So that's resistance on the daily chart. If it does break that, then we do have a reasonable move of around about 48 pips to the upside. There's very little noise between here and there, even on the daily chart. So this is our chart of the day, but you need to be patient with this. We want to see it break 110.22. So that's what? That's around about 7 pips up from where we are now. So that would be our entry over there, and then we would look for that 30 or 40 pip movement with little noise there. Even if we put it back to the 4-hourly chart, there's little noise there that would get or get in the way. If we look at the DAX, I just want to do a quick side thing before we look at the ASX. This is reminiscent of a lot of the indices at the moment. You can see we've just started to top out a little, testing record highs on that. We'll see the similar picture on the FTSE. Eventually when we get there. Let's drag the FTSE on. You can see a little more choppy on that, but we are, if we just put it, there we go. That's what we're waiting for. So again, moving higher and record highs on the go. And if we look at the ASX 200, we're actually testing 7,400 at this stage, trading towards the highs of the session at the moment. And we'll have a look at that in a little more detail when we look at stocks. So indices generally positive, and somewhat unusually outside of the US, we are seeing trends in a lot of the key indices across the board. If we look at the Aussie US, we can sort of see that we're holding on to support at 76.95. Not interested in this at all. And if we look at the GB pound, again, we're in range. You can see we're in range, and we're trying to hold on to that 140.80 level on the daily chart for GB pound. There is some potential move if we get a candle that closes a little further down. There's about 86 pips on the daily chart, but again, quite noisy around this area here, so we might just scalp 20-30 pips off and be happy with that. Look at the New Zealand dollar, which does, as we said, seem to be showing some strength today along with the Aussie. Look at this versus the euro. We've now broken a key level at 169.87, and although there's some noise there, again, there's around about 35 pips there. So that's not a bad one to keep an eye on. Let's just check in on the euro. That's the euro Kiwi. Let's just check on the euro Aussie and see how that's shaping up. Much the same, a little bit noise. You can see how it waved up. We've got around about this 157 is on a daily chart, so we've got around about 40 pips to do that, but that's quite noisy around there. So that Kiwi, euro Kiwi looks like a better trade, really. One last one to have a look at is on the currency side of things is the Aussie yen. You can see we are pushing up towards a key level on the 30-minute chart. So we're looking for a close above this 84.73 level. If we get that, then well, again, we could have about 20 pips in that for scalpers, but really hard work. And one would suggest that we're not going to get the big movements until after the Fed has done its business later on tonight. Okay, so that's the FX markets with our chart of the day being the US yen around about 8 pips higher than where it is now. Okay, if we look at the ASX, let's do a little refresh here. Okay, so there we go. That's 7,400 that we're testing now, which again is record highs. So we're pushing quite significantly through that, and there's a few stocks that are moving this up. We're getting still some weakness in resources after yesterday's sell-off, and you can see there the advances versus decliners aren't much different in terms of numbers. So it does look like a particularly focused move higher. We'll just have a quick flick down these. You can see that in terms of the banks, banks are doing okay. There's ANZ up. There's BHP in the commodity space down. The Bank of Queensland up 0.4%. CBA, I'm guessing, will be up again without looking at it. Yeah, there we go. CBA up to $104. That's quite significant. Looking down here, then again we see some weakness in resources. Even the rare earths are getting hit a little bit, so you can see that's down a little bit. You can see Macquarie's up. Might have a look at a Macquarie chart in a moment. And if we look in the energy space, there's Oil Search up to 420 and WPL up nearly 3% to 24. We'll have a look at a 24.40. We'll have a look at that as well. Wesfarmers have a nice pop, and we've got in, even though Afterpay is up, Zip's down and Xero's down. So that fintech sort of space is not looking particularly good either. Okay, let's have a look at put some charts around this. This Aussie dollar yen is looking very strong. Oh, before we do, we reference copper. There's that drop yesterday in copper, which put it really at an 8-week low. So we're not seen here since middle of April. Looking to find a bottom, maybe some short covering initially. But the next move on copper is pretty critical. We'll talk about that tonight in detail. So just want to, because of that, of course, resource stocks are still under a little bit of pressure. There's Oz Minerals today. You can see how choppy that is, and we've even got a cross of the short term. And Mays wouldn't surprise us to see this pullback down to around about 23.50, which is the important level on this. Very brave if you're even contemplating getting into this long at this stage. PLS has been one of our favorites for some time. That turned around last week, and so we had an engulfing bearish candle yesterday on the back of anything mineral wise, anything resource wise getting hurt. Got some follow through today. We did actually start pretty neutral, but we've just drifted down. Look at APT again, one of the picks from last week to keep an eye on as we broke through that 200 MA and that 101, around about that $101 level. So that's holding up okay. Probably the outperformer in that sector, but again, not breaking any records today. But wouldn't be surprised to see this sort of drift up over the next few days towards that 120 level. So no reason to get out of that at all. Xero pullback today, but this is on a nice move higher. Just looks as though it's got, we just put a chart on here, sorry, a line on here. You can see how there's resistance here and some support around here. So it's not surprised we're stuck at 138, but we'll get a break through that. We could be back up near that 150 level. That was essentially its high. EML, another one that we're looking at, that sort of tipped over as well, not surprisingly. But on the positive side, and we still would not short this market unless it's a very compelling case. TWE, this is our ASX chart of the day. We've been talking about this again for some time. We liked it when it broke this level here. Liked it as an exit when it flattened off. You can see it flattening off at that level. At put a line there. You can see how this is at that $12, nice round number that which the market likes. A textbook ascending triangle. If you want to know what an ascending triangle looks like, that's it. Okay, so we had this key level to the upside. We had higher lows, and then we've got the breakout today. That's looking pretty positive. Even that candle's holding up in the top third at this stage. So that's our chart of the day. Now, where might this go? Put it on a weekly chart. Certainly the first instance, we wouldn't be surprised if it checks out that sort of 12, 80 level that it hit in July. That's around 5% from where we are now. If we break that, then we could see ourselves up over the course of the next few weeks, around about 30%, looking at that as a chart. Money's coming into banks, as I've suggested, but these aren't technically strong. If we look at ANZ there, you can see it's still trading under a range. Sorry, under a resistance in a range. So in a range of around about $1 on ANZ. CBA obviously keeps on pumping higher, but we'll have a quick check in on Macquarie. We hadn't had a look at Macquarie for a little while, and you can see how this is a very interesting move today. So it's been in there's a resistance level. We'll put it on the line chart just so you can see that easier. Always a good tip. You can always see key levels if you do that. So you can see how it was resistance here, that 154 level, resistance here, support here, support here. So this is a very important level for Macquarie. Though not a particularly compelling candle today, let's say it closed towards its high around 155.30, then there's potentially a 4% up, which on a bank is pretty impressive. QBE were another one we were looking at last week, and that's continued to look strong. As you can see, again, a day which hasn't filled us full of confidence, but nevertheless is off its lows of the session. We'd need to see it up 1260 for a trend continuation. You can see how it paused a little bit around this 1130 level, but we'll look as though if we break this pivot high, I would suggest this is probably technically the level to look at around about that 1150. And again, to give context, you can see how important this 1150 is. Back in mid 2019, that was support for many months before it finally pushed through that level. Okay, and we did promise to have a look at Wesfarmers. Feel free to pop in any that you wanted me to have a look at. So here's Wesfarmers, really nice pop today. Not sure what's created that, but technically that's very strong. If you'd seen this yesterday, you might have got brave, but this is most certainly a very bullish move. This is record highs on Wesfarmers, by the way. But you can see even since open, we've just continued to drift higher as more and more buyers jump onto the bandwagon here. Yeah, so yes, we'll have a look at Sonic. Sonic Healthcare, let's put it on a daily chart. Looked really strong this morning. Let's just make sure that's all the data added. Yes, it is. So really strong this morning, very, very strong open, smashed through that key level at 37.50, but then it's just given it all away. So around about an 80-cent swing in the price of this today, which is well over 1 ATR in one session. So about nearly almost 1.5 ATR. So not sure what's going on with Sonic, but certainly that seemed to be quite positive early and has given it all up. If we look at RMD, this is going to take a little while to RMD have been an outperformer. I missed this completely, but you can see really over the last couple of days, this has looked very strong. To put in context, you can see again record highs. So money coming into healthcare. Let's just have a look at a couple of the healthcare stocks while we're here. Let's have a look at Cochlear. Again, looking very strong, looking to test resistance. This may be worth keeping an eye on. At 243.40, you can see we've tested that already. These were the highs we hit in November 2019. Let's have a look at Fisher Paykel as well. far less compelling FPH, so wouldn't leave this alone. There's enough other opportunities in this space for us not to be worried about FPH. Just check in any more for any more. Yeah, we can quick scan at cryptos. So Bitcoin's had essentially a better week, and this is technically looking interesting all of a sudden. You can see how that 40,000 level is an important one. There we go. Let's just put it bang smack on 40,000. So not surprisingly, as I've said time and time again, markets like nice round numbers, and so we're stuck there. So if we do get a move beyond that to the upside, we could see some more buying coming back into cryptos after really what's been quite a torrid month and a half, as you can sort of see. If we look at Ethereum, let's drag that on as well. Don't think it's performing quite as well. Also trading within a range, obviously. You can see there we're almost bang smack in the middle of that range. So Bitcoin's actually looking at a better bet at this stage. If you're interested in re-looking at cryptos. Okay, in the US, just a few to have a wee look at, and then we'll thoughts on Dogecoin. I don't think. Give me a second. No, we do like can't trade it on here, but we can see there's Ripple and Litecoin as well as that. Let's just get a Dogecoin chart. Obviously, there's other influences on. Just have a look at the Coinbase chart, see what it gives us. Not looking. Let's just have a look at a yearly. Maybe a monthly chart. So you can see Dogecoin really is drifting downwards. Doesn't look particularly clever technically. Would suggest that this level around about 39 cents is the critical one. If we break that to the downside, we could see ourselves down to 32 quickly, and then who knows from there. But that's looking like a head and shoulders pattern if ever there was a textbook one to have a look at. Oops. Yeah, I don't mind having a quick look at Ripple. Just to complete the picture a little. Again, not one to be technically excited about at the moment. It actually doesn't look that dissimilar to Dogecoin in terms of its pattern, but looks as though it's trading towards the bottom of the range. 200 MA might be important technically. No worries, David. Anytime, mate. We'll go. Okay, quick look around the US. A few to have a look at. Let's start with the US banks at this stage, and we'll have a look at JPM. So US banks have tipped over fairly significantly in the last week. We've now got a cross of the shorter term moving averages. This level here that it's testing right now at 154.88 is important. Again, I'll be reluctant to enter anything significant in the US until after that Fed statement. So if you are up early in the morning and want to have a quick look at, that may be the best time to do so. If we look at the semiconductor space, actually looking a little more positive. Here's Intel. Now, not a staggeringly good day yesterday, but you can see how this is beginning to look interesting with that global chip shortage still very much very much an issue. Intel looks good over $58. And if we do break 59, much as though I'm not a great filler of the gap, the market might see this, in this case, as a potential opportunity. There's about a 4% gap there to fill. MU, I think we had a look at last week, looking a lot stronger. You can see we're trying to break out of this downtrend that's been in place. There we had a little foray over it intraday at the beginning of June. We're now back at the top of this, so this is beginning to look very interesting. And 84.38 is a level that would say this is broken through this here. You can also see it with support there, so this would be an entry on this potentially, and could take us up around about 6% on that. Twitter has obviously been one of our favorites of late, and that still continues to drift higher. We've now almost closed the gap that we talked about there before. We've got about another $3 or what's that? That's around about 5% of, yeah, about 5.5% to close that gap. Again, just a little pause around $60. So we need to sort of see some distance between price and 60 bucks to get excited about a potential long entry on this. And finally, Zoom. Again, we talked about this as a break, on a break through that 200 MA. We got that break, as we talked about, and of course it moved up to the level that we thought maybe the first stopping point, which is around about this 360 level here. And you can see why again, support, resistance. We're just stuck there right now, so we're looking for the next move up, and this one could be the one that takes us up to test 400. So I'm actually going to make Zoom the US chart of the day on a break of 366. I think would technically give it enough momentum to push it towards 400. There certainly looks to be some popularity related to this as things open up. Maybe businesses are using it more than perhaps market anticipated, as it was dropping off throughout the beginning of the year there. So that's the day that's in it, really, guys. I think there's so just to refresh, I think that possibly the US Japanese yen is the one to look at from an FX point of view, although the Kiwi, the Euro Kiwi was also interesting. In the ASX, TWE looks strong, and in the US, Zoom could be where it's at. So I hope that's useful. We're back tomorrow, of course, and as I said, don't miss tonight's copper session. What I'll just do is, just in case you're not registered for that, it's an 8 p.m. kickoff. So I'm just going to pop the link into chat. And we'll look at a little more close about what's moving copper, what's likely to influence it over the next few weeks and months, and also how to trade it, importantly. Also within that, what I want you to do if you're rocking up to that session, which I put the link in chat now, is I want you to look at the process, because it's a good example of how you put a fundamental story together for perhaps a longer term trading idea, although irrespective of short-term volatility. We'll see you tonight, Alison, and all of you. Thanks, Wayne. Yeah, I'm sure I'll be more and more on the mend. Thanks, Andrew. Cheers, guys. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you again soon. Bye-bye for now.